Digital innovation unit number 9. We're going to be talking about managing new product development teams. So, whenever we have a new project, a new product, we need to make sure who's going to take care of that. Do we have a special team that focuses already on all the innovations, or are we going to pull people from different departments and we're going to ask them to do something for us? So we're going to be talking about that today. So first of all, let's look at constructing the new product development team. So in this case, like I said, it's important to understand the magnitude of the project, the goals of it, what are we trying to achieve out of them, and based on that, we're going to think of if it's a very important project, maybe we need to pool resources from different departments and make them to work only in that. However, if the project is just minimal, maybe yeah, we need some resources, but it's not critical to the survival of the company, then we may think we are just going to use some of those resources for a short period of time, and they can continue working later with their work. Or alternatively, just put some of your effort. Maybe I'll pay you some extra time, and you just come on, just stay longer for this project development, or you come on weekends. That's up to the company, right? I'm going too in depth in there. So anyways, we have to understand what the company really wants out of this project, and then from there deciding the team size and the composition. Like I said, the composition is the structure that we have, whether there's full involvement of the employees or just partial. And then the same thing, we have to understand what kind of resources we have, also financial, human, and spatial as well. And the same thing as how effective this project is going to be. So now let's look at the team size. Team size in this case, as we spoke earlier, companies the larger the better. In team size, actually the smaller, not the smallest, but there's an optimal size to it. Okay, depending on the project that we're working in, we have to determine the size. But again, most of the companies, that the most innovative companies, they have discovered that the smaller the team, the better the communication is, and the effectiveness is better. Mostly because social loafing happens. Social loafing happens, and you may have experienced it before when you have your team projects. It is when you have 6 teams, so 6 persons in your team. So one of them feels like, well, I only do one small part of it, so there's no major problem in it. If I miss that part, someone else can do it for me. As compared to when you have 2 persons in the team, you have 2 people in the team, then 50%, you're accountable for 50% of that project. So that means that responsibility relies higher on you, and that is precisely what happens in large companies. Whenever we have smaller teams, the pressure is much bigger because there's something that you have to be accountable for. So the team composition, we have to think of who's gonna be in it, for many reasons. So we have to think of who's gonna be a good fit in terms of communication, right? Who can provide good communication out of that. Let me put some colors in that so that you can see that better. So we have to think of the communication in this case. Who is gonna make sure that that communication leads well? We can have leaders or members from maybe the manufacturing team, but they are not very good at explaining the things or what really they want. So that's why communication is important. Now, design and manufacturing. These are two things that are important. So we have me as a marketing individual, as a marketing department member. I can have a clear idea of what the product needs to look like. But manufacturing is going to say, yeah, that's possible in your brain, but not in manufacturing. In the processing line, it's very difficult because we need a lot of materials, we need to change the machinery, etc., etc. So we also need someone from marketing, we also need someone from design, we also need someone from manufacturing that involves in that team, so that everything comes together, right? So that's why we call it cross-functional team. So these cross-functional things are in charge of that different functions from different departments. So in this case, like I said, when we have people from different areas, they are more functional, they work better, and they have more advantages. Now the same thing, the combination of these teams also gives us a lot of information sources. Sometimes manufacturing members have more information about the materials that are the more resistant. Marketing has better view of the market itself, and finance maybe has a better idea of what really, in terms of the budget, how can we allocate it. So that is important. Okay, so here it talks about homophily, so which is like, for example, whenever we have one team, and let's say we have a team of 10, right? And we're gonna put one for each team. Perhaps that's not a good idea. Perhaps two from one department, two from one department, two from one department. So at least that these two team members, they can work together, they support each other, rather than we have individuals just guessing there. So that's why we need that. Okay, very good. So now let's continue a little bit into this team composition. So we have the structure of the product development team. So we have, like I was saying, depending on the importance of the project, we will have to think of how we're going to allocate these resources. So we have the functional, the lightweight, the heavyweight, and the autonomous. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that now very quickly. Okay, so for example, in this case, we have the functional team structure. In the functional team structure, people still belong to their own department. So that means on and off, they call us for a project, we attend meetings from time to time, but pretty much is not our priority. Why? Because in this case, the project is not too critical. Now, we have the total opposite. The total opposite is, I need someone fully dedicated on that, and I need to separate them completely. So in this case, I separate team members from their departments, and I make a whole new project, a whole new team, a whole new division, right? And that's how it's going to work. So when we talk about, for example, the heavyweight, in the heavyweight also we have that, but usually this is temporary. That means I need you to focus on that project for maybe 2 or 3 months, but once you're done, I want you to go back to where you belong. All right? And then we have the lightweight structure, which is, in this case, there is a project manager. In this functional teams, usually the project managers are also within their own teams. But in this case, we already have a project manager. In this case, like I said, maybe the allocation is, maybe, I don't know, 70% of the time you are belonging to your department, and 30% you put that project. Okay, so again, in this case, the more important is the project, or the more weight we want to allocate, the more independence we will give to the team members. Okay, so that's how this works. So now, sorry, that was the same one. Management of product development. So in this case also we have to think of the leadership. So effective leaders, we already talk about team championing. This is where team championing exactly comes in. Championing is not about whether another project was successful or not. Team championing is pretty much about leadership. Someone that already is familiar with how to manage the communication, how to deal with the lower levels, the higher levels, and make sure that there's a good balance between them, right? We also, this project champions also are effective team leaders, because they know what are the strengths and the weaknesses of a certain department, a team, a company, etc., right? So in this case, that's why it's important to have a good team leader. So now talk to the team administration. So in the team administration, whenever we have this kind of projects, we have to think, let me try something today. We have to think of the goals. Okay, what goals we're going to achieve, we have to set them on paper. So that is the project charter for. Okay, so we're going to establish in the project charter what we want to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, the budget that we have for it, and how that's going to work. But in the contract book is different. In the contract book is a follow-up. So what we're gonna do is, in the contract book is, okay, you set some goals in the project, in the project charter. You set the goals, how you're gonna achieve them. So in the contract book, we're gonna follow up that those goals are met. Okay, good. So now, finally, we have managing virtual teams. So we understand that nowadays technology has changed a lot, especially when it comes to cloud computing. So when it comes to cloud computing, we can see that, for example, previously we have teams. Like I said, they have the members. And whenever we had a large project, they had to physically go there. We have to understand here that there's multinational companies. So you want someone to be involved in this team, maybe your original base was in Korea and this project was in India. So you had to physically send people there. So that took some of your resources, your time. But nowadays with the virtual teams, that is a very different story. With the virtual teams, this is not necessary. You can work from the commodity of your house, just in a computer. Then we have this cloud computing where you can have the system, I have the system, we can talk in real time. Of course, there's problems like we do in the Zoom, that there's connection problems, but in general, there's a lot of companies taking advantage of these virtual teams because it's a cost benefit in the development of the project. So with that, we close for today. This is not a very extensive unit. So if you have any questions, please let me know.